Hello and welcome to the podcast from Duendelvin. I'm Corbin, and in this podcast we will be exploring the world of Savarion. Here we have Jeff and Kyle, and today we're going to be talking about part 2 of the creation story, the Betrayal.
That's it. Right.
Can we get a quick recap of what happened last time we talked about the creation?
So we talked a little bit about how there are these two gods who decided to take a test to become Dysactos, which means they get to be creators and their creations get to be accepted into the wider world. Bam. So they're taking their test and they decided to do it together. So we have the two brothers, Parbulcon, Veritu Sanctus. And they come together and they're like, we going to build something so cool. And they start to play with Legos. They're building their Legos. They're building their world together. And that's pretty much where we left off. We talked about how they structured the world, which is a really cool explanation. Definitely want to go check that out. I'm not going to go into that detail because our world is awesome. And so
That's why this podcast
and the
exists.
order in which all the races were
created. Yeah, absolutely.
And their special thing.
Yeah, their divine
They're all
purpose. We
special.
touched just a little bit on their divine purpose.
The 9 tiny little bit of their divine purpose, yeah. And then their
They're God-given gifts.
the way that they created their denizens. The underworld is full of the Immortuum and the Comatai, and the overworld is full of the Coriatii and the Sprites. And that was supposed to be where balance came from, was between those two, and they came together to create the 9. And there's a specific order, and we're actually going to be doing a series where we're releasing those in order from first created to the youngest.
Well, right now we're in the midst of it because
Yeah.
we already did the Mustupert and elves.
Yep.
So
Alright.
Yep,
Okay. So
we did do that.
is there more recap needed? Are we kind of feeling good about what we read last time?
Not really.
Okay.
So, you talked about it in the magic. There was this Vagog who was unleashed and corrupted everything. Why did that happen?
You know what? I mean, if you want, I can go into it. You can get into it. We got some fun here.
so Vagog's way down in the story.
Yeah, because first we have the first mistake. That's okay.
Well, let's start there then.
Well, let's try to keep it timeline so
Yeah.
that we know like what happened when. Since we're talking about the creation, let's talk about it like in order
Okay.
of like what happened when.
We're getting
Vagog-
Genesis with this. Okay.
Do what?
We're getting Genesis with this. I
Well,
like it.
I mean, that way people aren't like, well, what about this? What about this? Because we kind of have it cataloged in timeline. So let's start with the two mistakes that
Yeah.
they made, the initial
Oh, they made
mistakes
two
that
of
they
them?
made.
Oh, yeah.
What?
They made 2 of them?
Two big mistakes.
Two major mistakes that kind of
Oh, so
Started
there's a lot more
everything.
mistakes.
do what?
There was a lot more mistakes.
Well, eventually, yeah, when you leave mortal races to their own devices, there's going to be a lot of mistakes made.
But the two major mistakes that that Parbulcon and Veritu Sanctus made.
Yep.
So
Okay. Well, what's the first one?
When they made the 9 races, they didn't make them to die. it was wild because they just finished, like they made the 9 races together, and they put a lot of the divine spark in there together. I think kind of the combination of the two of them working together was really powerful. And when they made the 9, they were like, here you go. And then their Dysactos was like, whoa, hold the phone, and instantly created death for the 9 races and an afterlife so they weren't being punished for the mistake that was made. Because you had these beings who had too much of the divine spark that was going to allow them to create their own systems. And if they lived for a very long period of time, they could actually become an affront to the Dysactos structure. They could become a chaotic threat.
Ew.
Yeah. So that was the very major first mistake that was made that got corrected right away. So strike 1 against the 2.
You made a pause after you said the 9, and I was like, the 9 races were the first mistake?
No.
We started creating, that was your mistake. You did something. Oh, that's bad.
You forgot how to put the Lego pieces together, bro. The the legs don't go on the head.
Why not?
No. That was the first mistake. Jeff, you want to tackle the second?
So the second one was an imbalance. And so what happened was, after they created the 9 races, Parbulcon and Veritas Sanctus decided that they were going to create the overworld and underworld independently. And the original goal of that was to make a balanced structure. So you have the 9 mortal races, and then you have good and bad, right, to create balance. And so while Parbulcon was creating the underworld, so we have the Immortuum and the Comatai that he was creating in the underworld, and the biome and the plants and all that kind of stuff he was creating down there. Parbulcon was creating the overworld and its biomes and everything, and he created the Coriatii and the sprites. What ended up happening, though, was Parbulcon started with the biome, and Veritas Sanctus started with the beings, the lesser gods. And so Parbulcon used the information of what the Comatai and Immortuum were, created the Coriatii as their wardens to keep them in control. And so that shifted and created an imbalance in the world. So their second mistake was that Parbulcon, instead of balancing, created a warden over the under, so that they were more powerful.
Okay.
Left it in balance.
What did that imbalance do?
So the universe doesn't like, especially because their Dysactos is balanced and ordered. Like, that is what his...
Is their universe in the domain of their specific Dysactos? And are Dysactos, like... Are there different, like, ways to take the test, and these two chose a balanced world and then failed to balance it?
Yeah, like whatever parameters that you set up with the person. So the Dysactos would take these two beings under their wing as they try to achieve godhood.
So
right?
they mentor them.
Yes, they're like the
Okay.
mentors. And we talked about this Dysactos was order, and that's what they were taught to do. And so their test was about being able to create order, and they had the opportunity to do it individually or do it together. And the two of them, with Parbulcon being the one that was more the heading that, like, hey, Veritas Sanctus, let's do this together. We're going to work together, and we're going to build this wonderful world. We're going to blow this test out of the water. And Veritas Sanctus was like, yeah, all right, bro, I got your back. Let's do this.
And he immediately goes behind his back.
He does already he's got some dirt baggage where he's like, I'm going to shine. And I mean, maybe Parbulcon has a little pride there where he's like, I'm going to be better than my brother, and I'm going to help him and shore him up. And that's kind of where I think where the mentality was for Parbulcon. I think like we created the thing. So
Like those fights you have with your siblings when you're younger.
Yeah.
Like Legos.
A little bit.
I have this little guy. He has a sword, but he can decimate everything. Nuh-uh, but my guy is better.
My guy has spinjitzu. Your guy just has a sword.
Well, but he can cut your spinjitzu.
But to answer your question,
Yeah.
So I think the universe is, in a grand scale, there's planets everywhere, there's Dysactos all over the place, and there's life on a bunch of different planets. And then they do the test area, and they control it into this one section that's separate from, and until Parbulcon and or Veritas Sanctus pass their test, that's trapped in its own bubble area, so they can't get out until one of them passes the test.
So this universe... So the Dysactos makes this universe and basically gives the power to create these two gods.
And
Yes.
they've been being taught this whole time. Like, they're not, like, obviously time span is different when you're an immortal. So you're looking at like, oh hey, we've been at school for a godly amount of time. It's time to take
Literally.
our test. Yeah. And that's what this is them taking their test. And yeah. And that's why it's a safety net with being in the bubble. So whatever if they screw up super bad and somehow make a black hole supernova thing in the galaxy universe, it's not going to expand beyond the bubble that's been created.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
Well, and the way you set this up is so that this universe can sit parallel to some other one, like, say, Star Wars.
Well, not
No.
for that purpose, no.
No, but, like... I know not specifically Star Wars, but something Jurassic like that. Like, it's not close to the same, but the fundamentals are the same.
So
you get the same root, but it looks completely different.
The idea behind the Dysactos was so that when people are doing their homebrews, when people are playing their games and building their own worlds, if we like it, we can extend that Dysactos title to that person and their creation and be like, bro, come be a part of the greater world, and then you can have interaction with these different realms in Savarion, as long as what they built matches
so more
and
like
meets,
those
or
official D&D campaigns. Okay.
Yeah, so
creating
just
an avenue.
it really the purpose of, and I don't want to get too much into it because it is detracting from the story that Kyle and I are telling, but in a larger narrative, what we have done is allowed people, once the role-playing game launches, to homebrew their own worlds if they want to. If we like it, they submit it to us and we like it, we can introduce it as part of the greater world that other people participate in. Effectively, they had passed their test. That's how that'll work. But the reason that we did it this way is so that other people can bring in their own story into Savarion. We've given the leeway for that. However, for the story purposes of Savarion, when what we're talking about, there's no relevance.
Nope.
So
Okay.
So let's, I mean, it's important, but it's not
Yeah,
relevant.
sorry.
So,
We're going to head it off, too. Neither Jeff nor I have a particular representation between Veritas Sanctus or Parvocon. They're just creations. They're not a reflection of individual personalities. I just want to put that out there right out the box.
well, you and I would be closer to Dysactos.
Dysactos, yes.
Because we've already passed.
You have been. This is
So,
is your oral report on your test.
well,
Test takers.
sure.
I don't know.
So when they create that imbalance, the universe introduces a balancing factor. And that is how we get Vagog. Vagog is an entity created at the level of the gods to effectively fix the imbalance. So Vagog's coming in and recognizes it as a being that is an outsider to the world that's been created. It's an invader that's a problem for them because it's impeding their test capabilities. And it's a very affront to that creation. Like it's a very glaring mistake that was made. And so that's mistake number 2 was the imbalance that allowed Vagog to be introduced.
So, Veritas Sanctus and Parvocon messed up. Something happened to come clean up their mess. They said, "No, I'm sticking to it."
They just doubled down.
They doubled down.
They to answer this problem, because this is part of it, they're not allowed to go like, "Dad, help!" They have to fix it themselves. So they come together and they create these super powerful weapons, because now they have to go to war with this being. And when this being comes into play, it begins to emanate a corrupting influence on everything they've created. It's when corruption is introduced into the world. That's when the corruptive part of the moon takes place, and you have the corrupted essence tree that becomes available. It corrupts the divine purpose of the 9 we're given. It begins to take and corrupt certain creatures that were benign in their function that now are awful.
they're
just
like
pure awful.
Any ones that are any specific creatures that have like
We have these wonderful creatures called cloud jumpers. They're just these cool little things that were symbiotic parasites that help you if you were in the overworld. Vagog gets a hold of them bad boys and says, "I have a new purpose for you. You're going to take people over." And was a thing that they would come down and try and possess people. Or with Vagog's influence, you also have that conflict that has a need for the last stand function, which is effectively, I'm going to burn my soul's energy to just to save my friends and do a valiant thing, except now I have a husk of a body. If a cloud jumper catches that body, there's no soul there. And once it assimilates into that body, it comes up as our undead. And which is why most of the 9 don't understand that, because the cloud jumper happens quick, like flash speed. It happens really fast. It's just a thing that goes down, and it can also have happened at any point in time in that creature's life. And so if that happens, bam, then there's a cloud jumper that's eventually going to assimilate into this body, rise it up, and just go nom.
So Vagog begins to corrupt, and the purpose of Vagog's corruption is to wipe the slate clean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Vagog's going to use Ayala and the Knights of the End of Days as tools to get there, but ultimately her goal is to wipe clean.
The Knights of the End of Days are another secret society.
Yes.
They're a secret society, so they'll be in that
Yeah.
They'll be part of the Secret
Just
Society's
letting
podcast.
them know. We'll touch that later.
Good catch.
But like as far as her visual representation, we don't actually have a visual representation of Parvulcan and Veritas Sanctus, but Vagog's physical representation would be whatever your mind saw as like the ultimate top tier of beauty. Mm-hmm. So whatever you thought was the most beautiful thing, that's how you would view Vagog. So her physical form would literally look different to everybody. So if she was standing in the room with us, what I saw and what you saw and what Kyle saw would all be different. We would all see her differently. So she doesn't technically have a true form.
And would this be like physical, like a body would be, or could she perhaps be a book? If someone viewed books,
no, it
as
would
beautiful.
be a physical manifestation of a body.
Enticing, like, yeah.
The book is talking to me.
Like think attractive.
Yes.
Attractive. Okay, so like appealing as we would see people.
Yep.
Yes.
Something that enticed you into behaviors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what. So Vagog comes in, begins the corruption, and the brothers come together to build these weapons and a prison because they have to have a place to put this thing so they can fix the mistake. So they start working together, and then they have this whole process that's happening. And Veritas Sanctus like, "Hey man, I wonder if these are gonna work." And Parvulcan goes, "Let's find out!" And just full on zaps some Veritas Sanctus, and then imprisons him, and goes, "Yep, they work." And that's where the betrayal comes into play. It's a twofold betrayal. Because the first betrayal was the introduction of Vagog, and the second betrayal was the imprisonment of Veritas Sanctus, because Parvulcan viewed Vagog's existence as Veritas Sanctus' mistake.
So we imprison Vagog, and then after that, Parvulcan goes to the 9 races, to the 9 mortal races, and he chooses a champion from each, and then gives each of them one weapon, but technically it's like a piece of the whole kind of thing. And so each one of them has their own weapon set to go fight Vagog. And so he's doing that because
he's like, I'm out.
Yeah, he's wiped his hands clean, but he can't have Vagog out wandering around. So he's like, you guys go take care of this. And so they go to attempt to destroy Vagog using these weapons. Vagog can't be destroyed because the imbalance is the Coriatii. Not Veritas Sanctus' fault, it's his fault. So now that he's imprisoned the guy who was doing the right thing, and now he's the only one, Vagog can't be destroyed.
Nope.
And so the 9 champions imprison Vagog and come back to Parvulcan like, yay, we did it. Da, da, da. And Parvulcan's like, really? You didn't destroy her? You just imprisoned her? I'm out.
Yep.
And literally like chucks the deuces and leaves to abandon the 9 races. The overworld and underworld just straight up abandons them to their fate. Goes to like another part of the world that didn't have land, went to the ocean part, goes down into the ocean and creates 9 of his own races by himself
to showcase his creation.
Yeah, his power, and creates his own little world of balance by himself.
Underwater.
And then is like,
underwater.
I'm the god of the underwater people.
And so
that's where Parvulcan leaves. And so that part of the story is unique and doesn't actually get introduced into the Savarion narrative until the Age of the Godless.
Yep. Do you
so
have
we're
his
talking
races
thousands
figured out yet?
We do.
Okay.
But this is way
story.
in the future.
Way in the
something
future.
so
Okay.
What is relevant now is Parvulcan abandons the 9 mortal races. So the primary story that we're telling is the story of the 9 races of Savarion. And so Parvulcan abandons them. And within like 20 years of Parvulcan abandoning, so Veritas Sanctus has been imprisoned, Vagog has been imprisoned, Parvulcan abandons them. So there's no gods.
Keeping in mind, too, in between that process, at some point in time, our dirtbag Ayala saw Vagog, got seduced, and was like, that's what I want. and left the service of Parbulkon as the high priest of that particular god and said, "Yep, I'm going over here. I'm gonna eat this apple." Bad reference, but I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna be your servant now. And so was fully seduced by
She
Vagog and
granted him immortality.
not immortality,
Agelessness. Okay.
Yep.
I keep mixing the two.
'Cause immortality is something that only the gods have.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And not
so
even our
that-
lesser gods. They can be killed.
Right.
Which we showcase.
So Ayala is fully seduced, and so we have the two gods that are imprisoned. Dysactos being like, "What is happening here?"
Right.
Parvukon's like, "I'm gonna go fix it on my own," and disappears.
I don't
And
like
then,
play with my brother. I'm gonna go
like-
play by myself.
Like 20 years later, after Parvukon's like, "Peace out," the war erupts into the 1,000-Year War, which is the
Benign
episode 1 that we talked about, the Keepers of the Peace.
Well, wasn't
So that's that.
wasn't that one started by Ayala?
No, that's
that
just
one
because
just like
you have 9 individual races who used to sit at the feet of the gods and learn and be guided, and then all of a sudden you have toddlers or like young adolescent kids on their own who are isolated from each other and now have to deal with each other without divine intervention.
Oh yeah, they're gonna fight over the truck.
Absolutely.
and their divine purpose has been corrupted.
Yes, and that's
So like, imagine you were given this divine purpose. Like you have, like let's go with the elves because
we just talked about them.
we just talked about them pretty recently. So my purpose is to travel the world, find the places that are dying, take them back to the Green Wall, fix them, and then bring it back and teach you how to do it, right? So that's my divine purpose. I have this, right? And Parbulkon and Veritas Sanctus are here. I can communicate with them. I can actually interact with them because they're around. Mm-hmm. They're engaging with us, right? And then all of the sudden, my divine purpose gets corrupted by Vagog, and now I'm like trying to fix a world that's dying. The world itself is dying because there's a god influencing that, and now my divine purpose has turned from a servant who's trying to fix everything to somebody who's trying to control the damage, right? I've gone into damage control, and I don't care about the other races. They're causing more problems. I'm jumping in. I'm trying to create. They're fighting back, and all of that starts to happen, right? Because they don't care about my divine purpose anymore. And so I go to the Minotaur homeland because they're digging up ground to mess with their different things, and they're causing problems. And so I want to go and fix it. And I bring a band of soldiers with me, and we're fixing it, right? And the Minotaurs aren't okay with that. So it causes a little skirmish, a little problem, and all that kind of stuff. And then the gods just go away. Like this conflict that has started between us because my divine purpose has been corrupted and your divine purpose has been corrupted. And now instead of working together, we're working apart from each other. You know, it's like the magnets got turned around and they're repelling each other. And so now all of that, but Parvukon and Veritas Sanctus, it's like we can still interact with them. So there's still some connection with the divine, right? And so it's on this brink of war and everybody's tense and everything, but they're still the gods, right? And then all of a sudden they're gone. And everybody's like, okay,
How I'm
flip the
seeing
table
this
and
is
kill
like
each other.
Like
you
a
know?
computer, you're getting taught how to code and whatnot. Suddenly there's a virus and you freak out, and then the people teaching you just they're gone.
Kind of, yeah.
It's
I mean,
like, what do
this
I
is
do?
a flip the table and, you know,
What do
beat
I
the guy across the table over the head, you know?
Yeah.
Because the guy mandating the rules of the game are no longer mandating the rules of the game.
Yep.
It's a
And
free
so
for all.
that's
That's what it is.
No rules.
And
no
with
rules.
limited interaction, like we talked about, obviously you start to fear the unknown. Not only is your divine purpose corrupted, but you don't have any way to understand the other people anymore. You're not involved with them on a regular basis.
They're so different from you.
Exactly. You fear what you don't know. You fear what's different, and that has the corruption effect that Vagog brought into play as well. Which, yeah, is where we get conflict. And conflict is necessary for growth, but you could have a guided conflict with the gods at hand who weren't always going to solve your problems, but this is a fledgling group of races by God's standards. They needed time to be...
Who were ageless, who were immortal.
Who were at one point in time they weren't built to die, and then were forced with death when they were first created. So they
what
would
happens for them is they're immortal. Death is introduced.
They would never remember that they were immortal.
They wouldn't?
No, that happened so fast and so functional, like at their creation.
Oh, okay.
Like, we're talking like reading the code, and then the code master's like, whoa, hard no. You're about to destroy your entire operating system. Let me fix that.
Nope.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, with that code analogy. But yeah, that was the second mistake. And that second mistake continues to fuel conflict like Jeff was talking about forever. Ever. And even, we have a different age where all the gods get forced out, and it's kind of an interesting concept because now we have like even the Proctor God who is like trying to watch all this and make sure nothing bad goes really bad. Can't get in there and play with it anymore.
They screwed up so bad nobody can access it.
Pretty much. It's pretty good. But yeah, that's one of the major repercussions of the mistake. Plus, you have all of Agog shenanigans that she gets up to, because her purpose is, I will bring this back to nothing and make you.
So she's not evil. She's trying to erase it all.
Exactly.
Okay, and what made Parvicon abandon the races? Like, why did he do it?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, like, look at these things that I've created with my brother. My brother's the reason that Agog is here. So all of the things that my brother helped me build are busted. So I need to go and build without him. It was a mistake to involve him in the first place. He's bad at this. I can't fix him with my genius. So now I'm going to go and showcase my own skills. I'm taking my half of the Legos, and I'm going to go play where you can't follow. Because you're in timeout.
We'll put you in timeout, leave your creations, and take everything else.
Pretty much. Like, yeah.
Okay.
So that was it.
The way you explain the gods is like toddlers, and it fits so well.
Well, I mean, a little bit, yeah. Because they are fledgling in their own right, but more like young adolescents.
They're young and immature.
Not supposed to be, but...
I mean, Parvicon is.
Yes.
But I would say that Veritas Sanctus is not.
No, he's the older brother, effectively.
Yeah.
Well, he's just getting bullied and can't do anything about it.
We didn't really get bullied.
He was stabbed in the back.
Yeah, he was stabbed in the back. He trusted Parvicon.
Yep.
And Parvicon took advantage of that trust.
Okay.
Looking at it this way, they worked together, and Veritas Sanctus poured a lot of himself into creating the weapons and the prison. So he helped design the prison that he is now imprisoned in. And it happened at a time where his brother had taken the power that they had built together and turned it against him. So, like, he was already exhausted, had just built this, and then someone just comes up and hits him on the back of the head with a sledgehammer, and then drags him into a cell and locks him in.
He could have easily done that to Parvicon, too, if he had been the one that betrayed. And so, because he was the good, not betrayer of the two of them, right? So, he didn't see Parvicon as the potential bad guy in the story, because in Veritas Sanctus's mind, there wasn't supposed to be a bad guy in the story, right? And so Parvicon becomes the bad guy in that story for a choice that Parvicon made, and a selfish one at that. But Veritas Sanctus wouldn't have been viewing Parvicon as the potential bad guy in the story.
So the main bad guy of Savarion is Parvicon?
Kind of. I guess the main bad guy as far as the story-driven antagonist is actually Ayala and his dirtbaggotry. But the overall cause of all this awful is Parvicon. Straight up. Like, there is no question about it. But history doesn't view it that way, because for a time after he imprisoned Veritas Sanctus, he spoke the narrative that Veritas Sanctus was not to be spoken of ever again. He actually, in the history of the Nine, wrote his brother out entirely. And
that is a low blow.
Oh, absolutely. Just full on erased him from all, like, can't erase from all memory, but erased him from all history and text. And
so by the time the 1,000-Year War ended, nobody even knew that Veritas Sanctus or Vagog even existed at that point, with the exception of Ayala.
Yep.
He's the only one that knew. And since he was the High Priest of Vagog, when he gets the opportunity to bring someone back, he doesn't bring Veritas Sanctus back, which actually would have been the right choice.
Absolutely.
Because Veritas Sanctus could have handled it.
Yeah.
But Vagog's purpose was completely different and about destruction. And so, because he was the high priest of Vagog, he was like, let's bring Vagog out of the prison.
Well, Ayala was twisted and
Ayala has
basically
been,
seduced.
yeah, he has an idea, and the vision that he has been shown is that he gets to sit where Parbulkon sat and be a god a god in his own right at the right hand of Vagog. Effectively, he is going to rule the world with Vagog teaching him and guiding him over this brand new creation that he also gets to help be a part of. He's not just going to be a created.
And remember, like, from Ayala's standpoint, yes, absolute, the boogeyman the whole time.
Yeah.
Right? But initially, high priest of Parbulkon. Okay? Now, Ayala is a male in the Muscapert world. So we're talking about in a matriarchy. Ayala's a dude in a matriarchy. Right? So he's the lesser, views himself as the lesser. Right? And so he becomes the high priest of Parbulkon, following and serving Parbulkon. When he realizes that Parbulkon is a screw-up, and Vagog shows up, not only is Vagog the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, but he would view himself as a servant too, because he's lesser than.
Because
he would
she's a
automatically...
Yep.
Because she's a she and he's in a matriarchy. Had it been a female Muscapert, it probably would have been more of a butting heads because they both are dominating
Entities. Yeah.
entities, right? And so we have the female in the Muscapert is the more dominating, and the male in the Muscapert is less. And so Ayala becomes the servant and steps into that really easily and is fairly easily seduced because he realizes how terrible Parbulkon is, and then sees the most beautiful thing he's ever seen.
And she's also
And
got
a
a
god.
good amount of power.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
which is
yes,
how
but-
they value themselves.
I mean, she wouldn't even have to lie to say that the universe created me to fix the mistake of Parbulkon. That wouldn't even be a lie from
That's
Vagog,
not the truth.
right? And so she steps down, says that to Ayala, who's just been discontented with him over Parbulkon's mistakes, most beautiful thing ever. And she's like, no, I'm the universe's response. I'm the god that was created because the universe needed a response to Parbulkon's mistakes. So, I mean, Ayala definitely was corrupted by her, but it's not like Ayala set out to be evil.
The circumstances lined up way too well.
Yes.
Huh. It's like we created it that way. But
It's almost
Who'da
like
thought?
it was designed that way.
But no,
So-
in all honesty, yeah, it worked out really well because of all the different correlations we put together.
So what happens when Vagog's released from prison, and does Virtus Sanctus ever get out? Or
Eventually, yes, but he gets forced out when all the gods get forced out, and then he eventually gets to come back. Like this, we're talking like way down the line, because when Vagog gets released, that's the desolation of the Horakai. That's
Vagog's our innocent bystander who got caught up in all of it.
no, not Vagog.
Veritas
Veritas
Sanctus.
Sanctus is.
Virtus Sanctus, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So we can cover this because we're talking about the gods and
Yeah.
the creation story and a little bit of the overarching. We can cover this. So Ayala brings the 9 races after the fall.
Yep.
And the rebirth, or the fall, the destruction, and then the
Yep.
rebirth happens, right? And so during the rebirth time, after the mortals get put back down and the Horakai are the gods at this point, right? Ayala exposes the truth of what happened with the Horakai, because he can't expose all the way back truth, but just the Horakai, and says, nope, Vagog is the right answer. We should follow her, and brings a couple of people to meet her, right? Obviously, they're like,
This
of
is
course.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We want her back because, again, she's the most
Pretty
beautiful
lady.
thing they've ever seen. And so they release her. And she starts wreaking havoc, causing problems, fighting with the 9 races against the Horakai. And this takes place long enough that the 4 brothers, again, Theranik, Catiline, Elios, and Zaok, go back and find the weapons of Parbulkon and Veritas Sanctus that originally imprisoned Vagog, and they re-imprison Vagog.
Yep.
Right?
Go
And then
back.
they decimate the worlds. This starts the affirmation. So this is our great break point in the story between the world as individual 9 races set apart from each other to everybody's intermingling. That's the affirmation. That's the moment that happens. At the end of the Age of Expansion.
Yep. Age of Expansion.
I do it too. I do it all the time. I'm like, Age of Empires. I'm like, no, that's a video game. But the Age of Expansion, right? So that's like 3,500 years or something like that. Not exactly 35, but it's...
Actually, it's more than that, isn't it? That's a very long span of time.
It's a long span of time.
We
but
have
it's
multiple generations.
I think it's between 3,000 and 4,000 years.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that age.
We'll have an actual timeline.
An overview of that age with a timeline. But at the end of that age, Mikkel, using the weapons of the gods again, and Duendelvin, giving Mikkel all of that information and stuff like that, effectively push all 3 or all 4 gods out of the world. So Parvocon's over here doing his own thing.
And then, yoink.
Right? Veritus Sanctus is trapped. Vagog is trapped. And Dysactos is like,
this is
you
wild.
guys are failing miserably.
I can just see him
And then-
sitting over top, just
Right. Yeah, just totally disappointed. And then Mikkel creates this bubble using the weapons of Parvocon. And now, because of this bubble, it pushes Vagog and Veritus Sanctus out of prison, but also out of the world. And then Parvocon gets pushed out of the world as well. That ends the Age of Expansion, starts the Age of the Godless, which makes the 9 races underwater show up. Right? So this gets crazy. The Horakai die in this event.
Yep.
Like completely die. All 4 of them just gone. Which releases their 4 herald dragons to like do whatever they want.
Yep.
And so then the 4 gods are basically trying to get back in. And so Dysactos at that time basically says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm participating because now you guys have basically failed. Whoever gets the world to honor them as their sole god wins and will get their Dysactos. And Vagog's like, is this me too? He says, yep. But if I get it, all 3 of you fail.
And
Okay. And that's what starts the Age of the Godless, and then the barrier starts to crack and occasionally gives enough alleviation that their influence can start going in. And then that's the next age, but that's how those gods start influencing. And then we have the Age of the Gods. And then after the Age of the Gods, we have a clear, defined winner. Do we want to say who it is?
No, not yet.
Not yet? Okay.
Not yet.
We do have, at the end of the Age of the Gods, so we're talking like 7th age at this point. We're
7th age.
The Creation Age, the 1,000-Year War Age, the Fall Age,
the
Affirmation Age,
the
Age of the Godless, the Age of Gods. And so at the end of the 6th age...
We've got the Age of Expansion there, so it's 7 still. Yeah.
That was the Affirmation.
No. Yeah, you're right. You're my bad.
So we have 6 full ages, and then one god is the clear winner at that point, and that kind of ends Savarion in its own bubble and becomes part of the larger picture.
So do Parvocon and Veritus Sanctus essentially create a Void Sister who just exists now?
Yeah,
yes.
basically.
So
I love how we talk about this a little bit, and the bubble starts to crack. This bubble also cuts people off from their afterlife. So we have this flood of souls going to the Port of Lost Souls.
Is that why it's cracking?
And then there's no way for them to escape. They need a valve release, and so they try to go out, and they just get slammed into this no god bubble. Like it's a no zone.
It sucks.
And they're getting forced back down and into this cycle. And so they're pushing and pushing and pushing, and causes a crack. And a bunch of them escape, which the pressure releases, and in that escape is how the gods are like, influence quick. And sometimes one will have more influence time than another, just depending on how quick they are.
Who's where at what time?
I mean, position is not necessarily as relevant. It's more about who's faster on the draw. Because if
reaction time.
Yeah, exactly.
But then they introduce, during the Age of the Gods, they introduce a champion and a group of heralds that each of them have access to. That while the barrier doesn't have the crack, in it, they're influencing the world for that god. So.
And then, yep. And the whole time, even though the bubble is there, they still have access to essence, so they're still
And
utilizing
at this
it.
time frame, Mael is dead, right?
Yeah, he got blowed up.
Oh, he got ended with the
with
Horkai
yep.
at the end of the Age of Expansion.
But Duendelvin's still around?
Oh, yeah.
Who does Duendelvin follow?
So Duendelvin survives that. Ian has a question, so
yeah.
we'll cover all of this, and then Ian has a question. But so Duendelvin survives
at the sacrifice of her companion.
Yes. So if you remember in Creation Part 1, or no, in the first episode, we had Duendelvin is now the scribe, right? Duendelvin gets a super Shambare, right? So one that's significantly more powerful, has access to a huge range of, instead of the
limited
what
bubble.
is it, 10 Reist, which is 40 feet, is what the Shambare have.
We'd have to look it up, but yeah, it's got a numerical value.
Right. So the Shambare have like an aura that's like this big, and anybody inside of that, they have access to their powers. The super Shambare that protects Duendelvin is like,
massive.
way bigger.
So much bigger.
And
Plus
so that one is significantly more powerful. In addition, Duendelvin is ageless and can hear people's thoughts. So she's powerful in her own right, but she becomes incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. But when Mikhail destroys the weapons of Parblucon and Veritas Sanctus, right, he infuses that divine power with the corrupt power of Vagok. He unites that power inside of those weapons, and it breaks the weapons, shatters them. And that creates the barrier, is that shatter point. Everybody within a decent range dies. Like, it's ground zero, right? And so what happened was, because Duendelvin was there, Duendelvin's Shambare steps in front of the blast zone and teleports her away. Mm-hmm. So she's no longer in ground zero. And his body, because the Shambare is so powerful, survived the blast long enough to get Duendelvin out, but didn't survive long term. So then Duendelvin is elsewhere, not at ground zero, comes back, and she goes and gathers all of the shards from the weapons and then fashions herself a set of armor out of the weapons and essentially becomes the leader of the world at this point. And so she leads the world, and we'll go in depth, so I'm just going to broad stroke this. She essentially leads the world during the Age of the Godless. And then during the Age of the Gods, she's no longer in charge because the gods are starting to come back and stuff like that, but she's still a major player during the Age of the Gods. And she doesn't actually die until close to the end of the Age of... Her death doesn't end the Age of the Gods, but her death is near the end of that age.
It's kind of like she was done and just wanted to retire. Like, her death is very chill as far as what she's accomplished and what she had to endure and how old she is. She didn't actually, like, get murdered. Like, I think she just decided, I think I'm done now.
Right.
And gave up agelessness with her companion, who was Clat. So Clat ends up becoming whole again at one point in time, and they actually have some really cool battles that we can go into. Clat
They
becomes...
don't really know who Clat is.
We haven't talked about Clat yet.
Oh, well,
other than the fact that
we'll talk about Clat when we talk about the orcs.
Yes, we'll talk about Clat then. I thought we mentioned him a little bit. Maybe.
We did a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because he's
all
the
that we know
father
about Clat is that he's
hybrid.
a dude and he's an orc.
and he killed a god.
And he killed a god.
A lesser god.
Well, they know that now.
We
we talked about it in
that.
Creation.
Who did he kill?
Yeah. One of the Kamatai,
The leader of the Kamatai.
Yep. Whose name is eluding me right now.
I don't
Verathemos.
remember talking about that.
Yeah, we did. We talked because that's what we talked about ritual magic. We actually talked about it in magic.
Was that the
episode,
one
too.
episode I wasn't
Yeah,
here?
we talked about it in Magic.
Yeah, that was Taylor.
The one time
that's
I
right.
wasn't here.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So Taylor
That
led
makes
that one.
sense.
But yeah, we talked about Clat
Yeah.
enough that anybody who's keeping up would know who Clat is. But Clat's a major player, and if you want to know more specifically about Clat,
We'll do it in an episode.
you can go back to the Magic episode or when we release the orcs, we'll have a little bit then.
We'll be live for
and
the
then
orcs.
we're also going to do a series on the leaders, like who they are, what they did during the fall, why they were in power, who their teams were, the names, characters, why they're important, all that kind of stuff. We're going to go in depth into each independent character. And so there will be 3 places you could see Clad.
Yeah, well, we'll be live for the orcs, so
We will be live
if
for
you
the
see
orcs. So
this
if you
and
wanna ask
want to do it,
questions,
keep up with us Tuesday, Thursdays.
orcs will be...
Oh man, we're counting.
Are they 5?
I would have to
4?
look at the banner.
They're 4 or 5.
Yeah.
They're the green one on the banner, so whichever number in the line of the banner,
So
if you look up at the
in
banner...
3 or 4
Right.
episodes, we'll be talking about them live. You can ask questions, whatnot.
Yep. And
Yeah.
in the end of the year, the 31st, we're going to go back live. And that'll be next week. We'll do that.
Yep. Because when this airs, it'll be the next week.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be the following Tuesday at 1 Mountain Standard Time. So we'll be live then. But I think we got sidetracked, and I don't even remember what I was talking about.
We do that a lot.
Definitely, but we definitely were talking about how
Duendelvin's death.
John was quiet.
Oh, yeah.
Her and Clack kind of fade into obscurity because they've lived a very, very, very long and conflicted
And
lifetime.
almost like we completed our purpose,
Yep.
and now it's time to step back.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And they can enjoy the retirement.
Ian, you had a question.
Oh.
How did Vagog break free the first time?
They talked about that. Ayala gathered some people, showed them, and they were like, "Ooh, pretty lady." Let 'em
Kind of,
out.
but it took a lot of power, and since the Savarion Knights have the Divine Spark, they're the ones that utilize that function with the whole group to break her free of her lock. If we want to get really technical, we're looking at one of the rituals that had to be utilized. It was a very powerful, very dangerous function in order to break her out, which would also put them in a lot of danger. So that was how Vagog came out, was the 9 and their Divine Spark using ritual magic all together with Ayala's guidance set Vagog free.
Yes.
They got lucky. They didn't get a face sucker.
Oh, yeah, no, because Vagog was there. So a god would have been able to put down an Essence Wraith very
Before it killed everyone?
like
Well,
a bug.
I mean, if they...
Yeah.
As soon as she was released, even if an Essence Wraith showed up at the same moment she was released, she'd have been able to...
Obliterated.
I mean, even if the Essence Wraith killed 1 or 2 people, I mean, Vagog wouldn't have cared.
It could
but
have-
she'd have been able to stop it.
Yeah.
This was Ayala.
Oh, we got another one. So why did no one knew about him? He was written out of history.
Nobody knew who Veritas Sanctus was at that time.
So nobody could free Veritas Sanctus because
And
Veritas
ritual
Sanctus
magic
was...
didn't exist before when people did know who he was.
Right.
Well, it would have been the only person...
Who would have known would have been Ayala, and then eventually Duendelvin would have known, but would not have had any reference because being
Right.
able to jump back into memories.
Right, but if Ayala wanted to free Vagog and didn't want to free Veritas Sanctus and is literally the only person alive that even knows of either one of their existences, all Ayala would have to do is just not say anything about Veritas Sanctus. It wouldn't have been like they were in conjoining cells.
Nope.
They would have been on opposite sides of the underworld, imprisoned in completely different locations. So Ayala would be like, hey, I need, 30, 40 people, whatever it was, to help get Vagog out. And then they go to the underworld, and then they go to Vagog, and that's it. So there wouldn't have been an introduction to Veritas Sanctus. Nobody released Veritas Sanctus because nobody knew he existed.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make
Because
sense?
Parvacon wrote him out of existence.
Yep.
Because Parvacon wrote him out of existence.
That's it. Yeah. Oh man, it's Parvacon is kind of just such a fun dirtbag.
A fun
And we'll get to the point where we have the 9 underwater races kind of fleshed out, not fleshed out, but introduced more.
Well, they are getting flushed out from the water.
We'll introduce them when we talk about when we get more into the Age of the Godless.
Because honestly, most of the role-playing game that we're cultivating takes place during the Age of Expansion, because it's not the Age of Empires, but the Empires rise during this time.
Yes.
So you two are the Dysactos sitting over this?
So I want to
Or are you guys like
I want to
the
make sure that we see
all-powerful
this as like
Dissectos?
clear. Kyle and I don't see ourselves as gods in the universe. Okay, we're just the authors of this story. Okay, and so the idea of earning a Dissectos is so that other people can participate in this world, in the world that we've written, in their own way, so that they can participate, because we want people to do that. We want people to be involved. And so we've introduced a way to do that. I don't see myself as a Dissectos.
Neither do I.
Okay, and so we're just the guys who created a story that we really like. You know, I hope it's coming across, but I'm pretty passionate about all of this. But I don't see myself that way, because that's like a god status inside of a world that like isn't actually real.
Yeah.
You know? And so it's just a story that I really love, and we're trying to tell this story.
And then we created rules that you can play in it, exist within it, and kind of immerse yourself in this story. But yeah, it's not like I have status in this world. I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were passionate at all. You only spent like 15 some odd years working on it.
It's almost 16 now.
Almost 16.
Yeah.
But
My
yeah,
bad.
we're not. Kyle and I are not members of the story.
No.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
There are pieces we can relate to, but everyone can. Like, you can find yourself in any story, which is really cool.
Right.
Hopefully you don't find yourself in Ayala's shoes.
Every now and again,
Well,
absolutely.
but and every
Constantly. Maybe
every
you need to
person
work
who
on
has
some
ever
stuff.
written or told a story puts their own
Yeah.
personal take into the story. So there's pieces of me in the story. There's pieces of Kyle in the story, but we are not characters in the story.
Well,
if
didn't
that
you
makes sense.
write some of your ideals and what you enjoyed into Clat?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
But I also wrote some of them into Rymat, and some of them into Yalik, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And
Well,
It's
Yalik
just-
seemed a little more inspired by Mom.
well, but I mean that Yalik is inspired by, but like ideals that I think are good that we should aspire to, you add those into, and personality traits that I have get added into some of the characters, and personality traits that Kyle has gets added into the characters, and morals that we see are good get added into some characters. Morals that we view as bad get added to some characters to create tension and conflict. And so that's how you develop a story.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely like
You can't
parts
create
of
something
us.
without pieces of you getting into that creation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
you can even be gross about it. There's pieces of you that get into cooking all the time. It's just, it is a thing.
It's just really what it is.
Yeah, little skin bits.
But, but we are not characters that exist within the story.
Nope. I don't embody
Okay.
myself in any one character at
So-
any point in these stories at all.
But
No, I didn't think you were characterizing. I was just thinking you would view yourself as like a Dissectos or the head Dissectos, considering you're the one who brought this idea to life.
no. No,
Okay.
because that would be putting ourselves inside of the story, and we're not.
We just get to tell it as it unfolds. And I mean, granted, our brains are constantly unfolding this story, and it has a completion. But it's it's not a. How about this? In the same way, without reiterating, we've beaten this dead horse. This horse is so this Irbisol is so beaten that it's done for. But yeah, that's the creation, and then that's what kicks off all the shenanigans. We can kind of wrap it back up. Is they mess up, and technically Parbocon messes up, gives Vagog the room. Vagog comes in. Parbocon continues to be like, "Oh, playing with my brother was a bad idea."
I do not like you.
Yep, and then puts him in timeout. And like, it is really unfortunate. Like, Veritas Sanctus' influence is so minimal because of his imprisonment. He still manages to do things like very, very quietly. But overall, like, this dude just sits and has to watch everything that he lovingly created get wrecked.
By the things he created.
Well, not just by the things he created, but by the absence of the people that should have influenced it in the first place.
Being him and his brother.
Yeah, which is wild. But
Yeah.
So
and it's kind of a fun. And I mean, there is a span of time before history's written that they lived with the gods. I don't think we actually have a specific time frame. We just have where Parbocon quit. Vagog came in. Parbocon said, "I'm out," and the 1,000-Year War kind of exudes from that point in time.
Well, there's not a lot of events that happen.
Yeah. It's not story there. It's just learning.
So,
Yeah.
But, all right. Well, it looks like we are out of time again.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week with the next, on Tuesday at 1 with the next race in line.
What's next? What's after the elves?
Is it the dwarves?
No. I don't think we're on dwarves next. Oh. We're getting...
Stand by. Technical
Who's
difficulties.
it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? We're taking bets. Okay. How about you just give us some verbal cue here as far as who's
just
next?
Say it. Let me see the
it's
picture of
the-
it.
Oh!
Is it human?
No, the
This guy?
humans were in the dead center, I think.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
that
human.
symbol. Yeah, it's
That's
humans.
third?
Humans third.
Humans were third.
It's brown or orange.
It's brown.
We're doing humans next.
Okay. I
Yeah.
guess humans are next.
That's what
Okay.
we that yeah, we're going human. Let's
Okay.
go. Our
Alrighty.
humans
Only
are
human.
so cool.
All right.
All
Well,
right, guys.
All
Thanks for
right.
popping in. Merry holiday, happy shenanigans, all that good stuff. Yeah. Whatever
Have
you choose
a
to celebrate,
nice-
however you choose to celebrate, enjoy it, have fun.
Have a good
Merry
celebration.
Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. See you next time.
bye.